Heidi, is your monitor working?
Oh, try my just so you know. It seems like.
Why would somebody be doing that? Guess they hooked up their laptop to display or something, probably.
Speak about top two, because from the conservative that you are. And
About the Sierra Nevada Conservancy?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
we are of the 16 projects that we've done with last, because we were introduced last into this, and we are close to shovel ready. And we prepare to do all we can. You prepare to do all you can. We are situated very well.
Mhm.
So I think we're in a good spot. You know, so you have to stay. Because it always goes into your district.
Mhm.
And she's very happy with that. And we're
Okay.
a year to 2 out for shovel ready. Some pretty big projects, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, unless you.
Oh, since you talked to them, free?
Yeah, and she was very pleased.
Great.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the October 7th Board of Supervisors meeting. We will say the Pledge of Allegiance. And Jill, since you haven't been here for a while, could you start us up?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda, which was going to be a presentation from the U.S. Forest Service. They will not be here today, and we will be looking forward to that presentation at our next meeting. And now we will move on to public comment. This time is for information from the public on matters not appearing on this agenda or within the consent calendar. All comments are limited to 3 minutes and must pertain to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. When addressing the board, please state your name for the record and address the board as a whole through the chair. No action or discussion will be conducted on matters not listed on the agenda. However, the chair may refer the subject matter to the appropriate departments for follow-up scheduling the matter on subsequent board agendas. Be a public comment in the room.
Hello,
Good morning.
good morning. My name is Lauren Wong. I'm from Tri-Counties Community Action Partnership, and I'm here to introduce the board to our organization for those of you who aren't aware of us, and I have a presentation I'll pass out to you. I'll do my best to keep it to our 3 minutes. As a background, we were a nonprofit that was developed by an advisory board, the Calusa Glen Trinity Community Action Partnership Board, as a nonprofit to serve all 3 counties and to build capacity without duplicating services. So we have been established as a nonprofit since 2017, and we first started our hire staff in 2021. We've been providing services in Glenn and Colusa County through our community health worker services, transportation services, and now our enhanced care management services. Currently in Trinity County, we have our first staff who is a community health worker providing differential response services, and we anticipate expanding into our enhanced care management services starting hopefully in November. We're looking at office space here, and we're excited to hire local Trinity community staff members to serve Trinity County. So we're very excited about that opportunity. We're very excited to expand our transportation program. As we know, it's a huge barrier in Trinity County. We've just been contracted with Partnership Health Plan, and we're just starting to provide those services now. Our mission statement is empowering community members to reach their highest level of wellness and prosperity through partnership, advocacy, and education. Our values are based on applying the trauma-informed principles in the way that we provide our services to community members, how we treat our staff, and also how we treat our community partners as well. So we're really looking for staff that can envision and implement our mission, our vision, and our values here in Trinity County. I do have a handout that explains more about enhanced care management, which is a benefit through Partnership Health Plan and Medi-Cal through the CalAIM reform. And it is focused on care coordination. So what we've found, it is really helping individuals in connecting to their medical providers and helping them navigate the medical systems. I'm pretty sure that most people are aware that transportation is a benefit that is billable through Partnership Health Plan. So that's getting a local dispatcher and driver to connect people to their health appointments. Our funding is through those billable services through enhanced care management, our community health worker benefit, and transportation. We are also grant funded through various grants through the state and other foundations and whatnot. And we also have contracts and with different county entities to build capacity as well. So, and then we do have some donations that have been given to us. I'll pass this out, and thank you so much for your time, board members. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Well,
Thank you.
welcome and
Thank you very much. Any more public comment in the room?
Good morning, Board.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm Patrick Jones. I'm former Shasta County Board of Supervisors for Shasta County, former mayor of City of Reading as well. I'm here today as a private citizen. I was not able to make your September 16th meeting, but on that meeting, you had a consent item D9, if I'm not mistaken, for a consultant opportunity for Joanna Franciscott. And that, I wished I was aware of that because I would have certainly come and spoke to it at that time. As you are aware, or I think you are aware, Joanna Franciscott ran our last 2 elections in Shasta County, and they were the worst elections in our history that we have. I think you were all emailed 28 points, 28 issues where Joanna Franciscott has violated election laws and election codes, insubordination, and she was ultimately fired from Shasta County. I think it was inappropriate to place that contract on a consent. As you know, consent items are considered to be routine and individually scrutinized and need no further deliberation. And I think that's far from the truth for that issue. I'm simply here today to ask that you bring that back. And I realize you can't discuss that today, but you can make a motion to bring that back and to fully discuss it and allow the public, and particularly people like me from Shasta County that have had firsthand knowledge with Joanna's performance. And it's concerning because she was fired from Shasta County and now she's getting a consulting job in a neighboring county in Trinity County. And that needs to be discussed fully with the public. Putting it on consent and approving it on consent did not give anybody the opportunity to discuss what her performance was like. And I think the board probably in whole is unaware of her performance as an assistant ROV. Today in Shasta County, we have an ROV and our assistant ROV that both have PhDs, and we finally are restoring transparency, which we have longed for decades. So that is my concern. And I'm here today to ask that you make a motion to bring this back so the public can weigh in on this contract. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room?
May I make a motion on that now, or?
Yeah, we'll continue with the,
Patty
morning.
Ramus, good morning. I've followed Shasta County's elections also, and I want to reiterate what Patrick Jones said. I don't know, I believe Shanna's office, her term ends the end of next year, this year.
this year, 31st December.
So, I don't know, I think you really need to let the public know about this. Elections are very important these days. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Board. Thank you for letting me come. My name is Dan Ladd. I'm from Reading, but I'm very concerned about Northern California. And when I heard that you guys had given a contract to Joanna Frescott, I felt like I needed to come over and just let you know what we have found there. I'm the Vice President of the Shasta County Election Integrity Task Force, and we've been looking at things for the last year and a half. The last two Board of Supervisors overlooked Joanna to give the job to different people instead of Joanna, because they knew that she was insubordinate and she had broken laws and continues to deceive the public. She doesn't want transparency at all. I've gone to her training for poll workers, and she encourages them to be rude to observers. She feels that observers are in the way and shouldn't be allowed to see what her department does. And that's the opposite of what we need in these times when people are really questioning what's going on with these elections. There's so many questions, and Joanna has not come through that. In this last election in November 2024, Shasta County, we had around 10,000 ballots, but we had 7,200, I wrote it down, so I'm not used to speaking stuff. 2,783 ballots turned in with no voter attached to them. So there's no way to trace where those are. The Board of Supervisors had to sign, they have to certify each election. They had to certify under duress because the state required them to certify it. They didn't have a choice, but they knew the election was done wrong. So they signed under duress unanimously. This is what Joanna Frescott has done. The last ROV that was in there, he said, hey, I'm new to this. I don't know. She's running everything. I'm just learning for this cycle. And that was the November election last year. And it was a disaster. It was the worst election we've ever had. There was all kinds of errors. Her way of reporting that, they said, how many variances were there? And she said 10. Well, that meant that she had 10 pages of variance. There was actually 511 variants. So she deceived the board and the state by declaring 10 variances instead of the actual 511 that were there. So I would encourage you to really look at that contract that you've got and what you're bringing in to your county. Again, Northern California can do better than this. Yeah, the lack of transparency is a big thing for me. I like to go in and observe and see what's going on. And when we're not allowed to do that, you have to question why. So thank you for your time. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Any other comment in the room?
Good morning, Chair Supervisors. Lisa Wright Lewiston. In the theme of transparency, I've been attempting for several meetings to figure out how the decision was made that there will be no payment plans allowed and people cannot get permits without having paid any violations in full in advance. I'd been directed to various locations, the last one being January 2025. I was informed that the board had directed staff in that regard. The only thing I found from January 2025 is a resolution granting authority to the CAO's office. Item 1 maybe is the thing that's being leaned on. The CAO is hereby authorized to sign any revenue agreements or amendments on behalf of the county. don't believe that that gives broad authority that would allow the CAO to make unilateral decisions about disallowing payment plans. I don't think that meets the values of Trinity County or the values of this board. I believe that's a policy decision that should be brought to this board, and it has great impact. Do you want to be a penalty-driven government, or do you want to be an enabling government with community development and prosperity and economic opportunities? Because that's what you're doing by disallowing people to move forward with permits if they haven't paid violations in full. In cases, sometimes the county had not even been pursuing that for years and they weren't aware of it. So I would ask that this, as I've continued to ask, be agendized for discussion. If that's your decision as a board, terrific. But let's open up to public comment and allow that discourse to happen. Secondly, I still am going to oppose and ask for this to be brought before the board for discussion as well, and that is the embedding of a law enforcement activity into the community development staff. So currently, code enforcement is done by the various divisions within community development, and code enforcement, code is law, right? So we are putting these people into positions to write tickets, to go on raids, et cetera, that do not have law enforcement training. They're not law enforcement. They shouldn't be embedded. We shouldn't put them within our community development groups. So now we have a civilian type of police force, if you will, that hasn't been properly trained in that regard. And it creates a public safety as well as an employee safety issue to put these people out on the street doing this work. Then there's a question of how that's being funded. That also needs to be more transparent. The only thing I saw in the last budget, and it's a very big budget, so I could have missed it, was a $40,000 allowance for co-compliance. Staff's time is way more than $40,000, and I don't even know if it's being paid in that manner. So I'd like this again. I'm going to come to every meeting that I can make and ask for this to be agendized for public discussion and discourse. I want that decision to come from the board, that you want police force to be your civilian community development staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Dan, good morning.
Morning. Chair, board, staff, nice to see you again. So I'm back to ask again to put Scenic Lake Mountain Road on the agenda so we can have a discussion and possibly a resolution. I strongly feel there's a way to fix the road and cost the county less money in the end. So it would be nice to go over those ideas and possibly come up with a resolution. And reiterate what the people from Shasta said about looking better into Joanna, kind of like what we said last time. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment in the room? On Zoom?
I show no raised hands.
No one on Zoom?
I'd like to make a motion.
You can't really make a motion.
I don't think just,
You can't make a motion if
Yeah.
you want to suggest something.
Can I suggest that we bring back this contract with Inseparable Solutions to take a good look in lieu of what we've heard today? I'm very concerned about and have been concerned about this hire, and I'd like more discussion on it before we move forward with it.
So in order to discuss this, there would be a motion to be made to suspend the rules, and that's a 4-to-1 vote, 4-5 vote. Following that, there would need to be a motion to re-agendize for reconsideration, item D9, also requiring a 4-5 vote.
Make a motion to do that. Just bring back.
Two separate motions.
Bring back D9.
Couldn't hear you.
First, you'd have to make a motion to suspend the rules. Requires a 4-5 vote.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules. In lieu of everything we've heard today. These people came all the way up from Reading, and I'm very concerned about the elections are one of my most important aspects of our government. We're asking for a discussion.
I'll second for discussion.
So this is just on the motion to suspend the rules.
This is just the first part.
Yeah, I don't feel that this is the appropriate thing to do right now. I think if there is a desire to bring this to a future meeting, then we can have discussion about that. I would encourage that what happens is that there is a discussion with our CAO and the staff who vetted the individual and
I'm going to
clarify
stop
your
you.
concerns.
Again, this is
Sure.
just on the motion to suspend the rules. This cannot be discussed. In other words, her qualifications and that discussion cannot take place in this agenda. So it's first to suspend the rules, whether or not you consider that appropriate. Second would be to bring that motion to re-agendize that item for discussion. So I just want to be very clear about what we're talking about so that we don't run
Yeah.
afield of that.
I appreciate that. I may have gone too far, but my comments were for that reason. I don't believe that we should be suspending the rules.
And I was going to say something very similar to that also. Should we take a motion on this then? A four-fifths? Or just double
Motion
it?
to
There's
suspend.
you have a motion and a second, so you require a four-fifths vote. So you need to take a vote to see if you all agree to suspend the rules by four-fifths vote.
Supervisor Gogan,
No.
Supervisor Brownfield,
Yes.
Supervisor Lutwiler,
No.
Supervisor Cox,
No.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris.
No.
Second one now?
There is no other motion on the floor, and you haven't agreed to suspend the rules for that motion to re-agendize. So
Thank you very
that's a
much, Amanda.
dead issue.
Okay, we will move on to reports and announcements. First, reports from department heads. Do we have any in the audience today on Zoom?
Show none.
CEO Tuthill.
Got a couple comments. So last week I was at the Trendell and Prism Board of Directors meeting, which were back-to-back meetings. As a reminder, these are the JPAs that basically run and oversee all of our insurance programs on behalf of the county, and a very high percentage of all the other counties, cities, and public entities in the state of California and just outside the borders. Lots of discussion about the general trends in the insurance industry. Not exactly great news, but not as bad news as the last couple years. So they're starting to see a little, the hope is they're starting to see a little bit of the top end of the extreme insurance rate changes. But there's lots of activity going on to try to curb that. There's lots of discussions with different of the large brokerage firms and all the challenges associated with public entities and some of the very high, what they've determined, what they're coining as these nuclear verdicts in liability cases that have gone on throughout the state. So it was very reassuring to hear like issues in other counties, but also what the whole industry is doing and trying to, in essence, work on our behalf to ensure that our, one, that we do have adequate insurance coverage in the future. That's critical. And then that the activities that different organizations are doing to limit that liability as much as we can by some of the trainings and some of the activities that I previously mentioned in here before. So overall, good. And, there's some new programs out there. There's some new leadership out there. And, at some point in time in the future, we'll probably have, a presentation in here from like a PRISM entity, if that's the desire of the board to kind of learn some more about that. But we are, staff is very involved with these organizations, and there are some movement in the right direction, I believe. For our building official status, I previously mentioned in here before that our, building official has moved on to a different job in the area. But I want to let you and everybody know that the building permit process will continue as normal. One of our building inspectors recently passed the plan check certification, and he has that, so he's able to continue all the, building permit initial application process and plan check process, as well as actually going out and doing the inspections. So we're working that. We did get a couple applicants for the building official position, and we're going through the process of evaluating those. Not nearly as good of a pool as we had hoped for, but we're working through that process right now. Also, for your awareness, I've been mentioning here before, but the community development director position is currently being advertised. It closes on Friday this week, and we're hoping for a good candidate pool there, and then to make a selection for that critical position. And that is, just by way of announcement too, on the week of October 13th, so next week, Caltrans has asked us to just announce that there will be tree trimming going on the main street here in Weaverville along 299, just for people's awareness. So there will be some, minor traffic delays, if you will, or, traffic safety precautions going on as they're appropriately trimming those trees as they have in the past, next week. So it'll start next week. That's all I've got for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any reports from members of the board? And we will start with Supervisor Brownfield.
Okay, so I went to a meeting with the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District and Ruth Lake CSD. And it was a wonderful meeting. We got to learn a lot about the dam that's going to be they're doing some seismic work on the dam in Ruth. The Sheriff's Department was there and discussed resident deputies and concerns that they had. Forest Service was there, and we had great conversations. Good meeting. It was at Journey's End, and really appreciate everybody coming together to make those meetings happen. Also, I'd like to read a couple of constituent letters that I have. I thought they were valid and important because of our road situation up there and the opinion of the board on this. It says, Mr. Chairman of Trinity County, you've been bamboozled by the Trinity County DOT Director. In March 18th, 2025, board meeting, you approved the authorized the purchase of 500 tons of asphalt concrete to be delivered to Xenia area by Dan Palmer Trucking for the purpose of patching and repairing our roads. Where is it? 7 months have passed by for the DOT director at a cost of $140,000 to the taxpayers for his salary. There are no acceptable excuses to repair the Xenia Lake, not to repair the Xenia Lake Mountain Road. We need you to take immediate action on this subject. That is from Jim Johnson. There's one more letter I would like to read from another good constituent. Because the board, and I invite the board, each one of you separately, to come up and look at these roads until you make your decision on this. The Xenia Lake, the Kenton Palm, has been begging now for attention to be given to our roads for years. We are excited to see the recent grading will more happen this year. We realize that we are out of sight, out of mind, but road maintenance has been missing for a long time. The longer the roads go without maintenance, the more expensive they become to fix. An example is where we have a road, the Peak Road, that has half slipped out. This slip is due to a culvert failure. That's maintenance. If the culvert has been replaced as it should have been, there wouldn't have been a problem now. Now we have a hole that probably won't get fixed for years. We do some proper and long-term signage there. The two sawhorse signs falling down all the time in its dangerous spot. We also need some mile markers. Time and the fires have removed all of ours. They are essential for establishing location. The Peak Road is a main road to town. There is a lot of traffic, a lot of lumber, cattle, locals, deliveries, trucks are very hard on the roads. The potholes are on the right-hand side of the road and are impossible to miss.
It's necessary to swing out into the left-hand lane in the curves, which makes this very dangerous. I recently saw the maintenance projections for the coming year. There's nothing listed that is coming our way than just routine and rarely gets done. One of our roads, Island Mountain, isn't even listed. We could also use prioritized snow removal schedule. We are happy that the maintenance yard over here has not reopened. We need this yard reopened. Hopefully it will really help. Workers will know the area and it will cut down on travel time. After all, we do appreciate what road crew has managed to get done. We are well aware of the county's financial condition, but we feel our roads deserve as much attention as other roads. Stewart Ranch. Thank you for listening to that. We invite you to come up and look at our roads instead of making the determination that the DOT is in the right here. And I would like to have Senior Lake Mountain Road put on an agenda if possible. That's all. No out of state, out of county travel.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Cox.
First, I'd like to express my appreciation to each of you board members for all of the extra meetings that you attended in your capacity as alternates on my behalf while I was away. Appreciate that. I didn't have any out-of-county travel. I did attend the RCRC meeting virtually, but Chair Gogan attended as our voting member in his capacity as alternate, so I'll let him report out on that meeting, and I have nothing further.
All right, we will keep in order. And I did attend the RCRC meeting as Joe was recovering from her surgery and had a couple really good talks with a few people that have put on some presentations here in the past. One of them was Connie Smith about the fiber optics coming through our area and the obstacles that we face with that in probably 4 of the 5 districts here, except for District 2. And it's the last or middle mile, most of the last mile of getting that out to the outlying areas. And her biggest obstacle is the application that she put out last time to the last mile people was a little not properly worded and made it difficult for them. So we're going to try to go back and reword that application and also try to pick some people from the communities in the outlying areas to kind of spearhead getting as many people to comment on the applications and see what their feelings are. Also, with the last mile comes the cost of being at the last mile. If there's, I'll just make up a number, if it costs $1,000 per mile to run that out there and there's only 2 people out there, it's going to cost you a lot of money. If there's 42 people out there, it's not going to cost you that much. So there is a price barrier or breakthrough that people feel is worth it and is not. And when you get to the outlying areas, we'll say Post Mountain, even further out in District 5, that cost may be overwhelming to some, but it's the reality of what it takes to get that service to our outlying areas. So we'll have a little talk about that. Okay, I thought you wanted to say something.
I would like further understanding, but I can get that later if you prefer.
Okay. And she hopes that it'll work out, and so do I, but it's going to be tough to get that last mile included for Trinity County. You good? All right. Also spoke with Angela Avery from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy about Trinity County's projects coming up. We were 16th out of 16 people that were taken into the Conservancy, not by any happenstance. Their boundaries broadened and moved into District 1. Rick is the primary for that committee, and I sat down with her for a couple hours during RCRC and just wanted to make sure that the 2 or the projects that are coming up within a year, maybe 2 at the most, that we are prepared to do everything that we can to help them, and they are prepared to do everything they can to help us. She feels that we're in a good spot with Rick, RCD, Watershed Center, 5Cs, and we'll keep that avenue of communication alive as we get closer to these projects coming to fruition, which is a very good thing for our local community. Also, there was a presentation from, we'll say, the fire safe people, CAL FIRE, and the one takeaway that I had from that is anytime that we see that there is going to be a defensible space grant given to any community, please take up action and sign up and get it done. It is free of cost, and not only does it, do what it's supposed to do, give you defensible space, but in the near future here, we all are going to run up against fire insurance situations where if you don't have X, Y, and Z done exactly right, you will probably lose your conventional fire insurance and have to go to the CAL FAIR plan, which is very expensive. So anytime that you hear about a defensible space, a fire safe meeting, please join, please attend. It's very important. There's quite a bit of grant money out there, and it's a very good cause. And we have great people in this community that are working on that now. That is all I have for now. Oh, no, I got one more thing, sorry. But it's a very small print. I just wanted to say this, and this is a kind of a feel-good story from Hayfork. The Hayfork Rotary Foundation is proud to share this October, the 1,000th book from Dolly Parton's Imagination Library will be received and delivered to a child in Trinity County. Our partnership with the Dollywood Foundation, the Trinity County Local Child Care Planning Council, and the state of California is able to bring the joy of reading to young children across Trinity County. This is a wonderful partnership. Every child under the age of 5 in Trinity who is enrolled will receive a free book, excuse me, every month delivered directly to their address. This program is designed to foster a love for books, spark imagination, and create early literacy experiences that will benefit children for a lifetime. Dolly Parton herself believes that books can bring magic into a child's life, and we share that passion for inspiring young minds through the power of storytelling. If you need to get hold of this group, get hold of me. I will get you hooked up with them. Having 1,000 free books sent to every household, is a wonderful thing, especially if there's multiple kids in the family. You can pass those books down. There is zero charge to you. The books are yours to keep forever. And with we'll say the decreasing in libraries over the last several years, this is a great way to get books for free. You can get one a month from the day you're born to your 5th birthday. So there's quite a few books available at no cost at all to you, and they are your books, and they're age appropriate for each age 1 through 5. So if anybody wants to participate in that or needs to know how to participate in that, please feel free to get hold of me with the Hayfork Rotary, and they can join up, and any child under 5 can get a free book every month delivered to their home. Thank you.
Chair, if I could add to your defensible space.
Certainly.
The RCD did receive their grant funding for the chipping program, and that is underway right now. And so if you've got items that can be chipped, turn in your application, and that will be taken care of for you at no cost to you.
Thank you. Supervisor Leutwiler.
Yes.
Yes.
Just finishing up my notes there. Okay, on the participated in a meeting with project leaders regarding the East Branch East Weaver Creek project, and this is for implementation of the culvert replacement project. Work has been underway on that for a long, long time in preparation, but we're finally getting to that place of planning for final implementation. I participated in the Science on Tap focused on wolves that took place last month. And just mentioning it here because I wanted to report from there that we have had sightings reported, but no confirmations yet at this time. And the presenter talked about that process, about how they go about confirming sightings with various steps. Also mentioned that there are funds that have been expended and some new funds made available for reimbursement of some expenditures and or confirmed losses. So there was money that was given to ranchers who had to put up special fences because the wolves had been seen actively predating in their areas. And so if they had to do that fencing, there was some money at one point, at least, for reimbursement of those costs. And then if it can be proven that it was a wolf attack that brought down animals and there was loss, financial loss, then there was money for that. So that's always in flux because the money comes and goes, but just wanted to share that information. Sierra Institute workshop. About a year ago, we had a meeting where the Sierra Institute, as part of the California Jobs First program, brought people together throughout Trinity County for a day to talk about priorities, needs, assessment situations, and this was a follow-up meeting that took place at the Rancheria and basically dug into what had been gathered before, what was updated about that, and what some things that were happening that could take place going forward. It was interesting that there was unanimous support from the people that did participate that they would like to see some kind of ongoing conversations like this, as long as they're action-oriented, not just talking. And so we did talk about ways that we can, at a better frequency than once a year when Sierra Institute comes into town, that we could pull something like that together. Seroptimist 50th birthday. Our local Seroptimist group celebrated their 50th birthday last week, and I was able to attend that celebration. We had notable accomplishments were highlighted by both the members that were there and regional leaders that came to honor the group. Assemblymember Rogers, Representative Heidi McHugh presented a plaque signed by the Assemblymember and Senator Pro Tem Mike McGuire in recognition. And I would like to recommend that the board issue a proclamation recognizing the Seroptimist's 50 years of service to women and girls here in Trinity County. Okay. Tourism funding, I just wanted to mention this as a reminder for folks. We worked with fellow ad hoc committee members to finalize the process for applying for those tourism-related funds. Information and the application have been shared on the county website and via social media. The Trinity Journal also carried information about that, and I believe it's going to continue to follow up on that. At this time, the process does not call for in-person presentations to the ad hoc committee nor the board of supervisors, but it is possible that the ad hoc committee, in reviewing the submitted documents, might request that or suggest that. The timeline does call for applications to be submitted no later than the end of day October 15th. Board review of the ad hoc committee recommendations is tentatively scheduled for November 4th. And the board at that time will have the option to award some, all, or none of the $70,000 set aside in the budget. So just to be clear, what the board approved before was to set aside the funds. They approved the ad hoc committee to work through this process to make recommendations to the board. Ultimately, the board decides, does any or all of that funding get submitted or applied or awarded to these various groups who will be applying. Okay, that's it for me.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris.
Thank you. I attended the North Coast Air Quality Control Board meeting in Eureka. We went through the necessary items on that agenda. Currently, one of the larger ones is the annual permit renewals for different bio burners. So we'll be looking at that at the next meeting, going through the process for the state requirements on that. And then I also attended the California Resource Conservation and Development Council Association meeting, where we went through a number of items, primarily regarding the the grant and workforce development project with the Natural Resource Conservation Service under the USDA, recognizing that there has been a bit of a lag time in some of those payments on the grant project. So we're having to reevaluate how to best serve that grant, and then also some other economic development ideas that we have for the region around the natural resources community. Those were the only 2 meetings, and I have no out-of-state travel, or I did have out-of-county travel to Humboldt.
Thank you very much. We will move on to the consent calendar. These items include routine, non-controversial matters and will be acted upon by the board by one roll call motion. If a member of the public has any questions or comments on an item on the consent calendar, they may provide them now. A member of the board or staff may request an item be pulled and considered separately. First item, D1, clerk of the board, approve. You don't have to read them.
That's just consent.
Good enough. Any public comment in the room? On Zoom?
I show no raised hands.
D2,
You don't have to read them. It's just a whole.
we're good? We'll take a roll call.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Supervisor Gogan.
Aye.
Supervisor Cox.
Aye.
Supervisor Lutwiler.
Aye.
Supervisor Brownfield.
Aye.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris.
Aye.
County matters. These items include non-routine or controversial matters and are listed alphabetically by department. A member of the board, staff, or public may request that an item be heard out of order. Do we have any public comment in the room?
So this is an appeal, so normally you would have the staff present and then have the appellant present and then public comment before deliberations.
Okay, should we have, Drew, you want to?
This one, I think you do need to read them. Do we, Amanda, do we read that in? Yeah. This one you do need to read.
Okay, here we go. Community Development, Cannabis, conduct an appeal herein to consider upholding, modifying, or overturning the Planning Commission decision to disapprove Planning Commission Resolution 2025-05, providing an ambiguity determination, appellant Michael Taylor, project number DEV 25-05. Drew, good morning.
Good day, Chair, Board, Drew Plabani, Interim Planning Director, Cannabis Division Director. So this item came about probably 6 months ago in discussion with the former Community Development Department Deputy Director Presley and myself when discussing how to interpret and administer this code section 1743050A7. So I'll take you through a bit of the background, but ultimately, you know, what was concluded between Ed and myself was that we would schedule this item as an ambiguity determination for the Planning Commission to give us guidance on how to interpret and administer this code. So following that, we scheduled it for a Planning Commission hearing on June 26th. And it was quite a busy agenda that night. And so it was the last item after an hour or more of discussion. No decision was arrived at, and it was continued to the next meeting, July 17th. Oh, sorry, July 10th. On that evening, we had probably 2 hours of discussion. Quite a bit happened. And so I will then now take you through kind of the background on what was presented to the Planning Commission over those 2 meetings. The first meeting, you know, the resolution was brought forward, quite a bit of discussion. Ultimately, where we landed was a direction to staff to bring some more data forward. So following that meeting, I reached out to North Coast Water Board staff and asked for data on the 2015 order enrollments in Trinity County. That information came back, and essentially there were 1,032 enrollments within Trinity County under the 2015 order. Then we did a bit of a rough analysis based on APN prefixes and determined that there are approximately 118 parcels within the areas identified in the limitations code section, which are the Weaverville CSD, Lewiston CSD, Coffee Creek VFD, and Trinity Center CSD. And so a good bit more discussion was had at the second Planning Commission meeting. Ultimately, the ambiguity determination item was voted down 2-3, with 3 of the commissioners feeling that that code section was crystal clear. So I'll point out some of the places where, at least in my interpretation of that code, it is not crystal clear, which was the basis for originally scheduling it as an ambiguity determination. I would say there's 3 main components. Excuse me. So within that limitations code section, it says an exception to this limitation is allowed for applicants who have submitted an application for enrollment under North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board Order 2015-0023 by the following dates: Weaverville CSD by December 31st, 2016, Lewiston CSD by January 15th, 2017, and Coffee Creek VFD and Trinity Center CSD by November 30th, 2017. So in trying to analyze the timelines related to the establishment of that limitations section, which were the original opt-outs, I went back through and looked at, okay, so when was the Trinity County Cannabis Cultivation Ordinance passed? It was adopted on October 3rd, 2017, and went into effect a month later, so on November 3rd. And you'll see in the staff report, there's a timeline that takes you through when the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board adopted the 2015 order, which was August 13th, 2015. So, and then in October of 2017, basically, 2 weeks after the county adopted the original cannabis ordinance, the 2017 order went into effect. So the 2015 order was superseded right about the time that the county adopted its cultivation ordinance. So from my perspective, it seems that the intent of that limitations code section was to create a grandfathering, if you will, of cultivation sites that were pre-existing prior to the establishment of the cultivation ordinance, or, there's a variety of dates there, but more or less to give the ability for pre-existing sites that had enrolled into the water board program to gain the exceptions stated in that code section. Looking into the water board 2015 order, which is also attached now to backup, the original enrollment documents included one place where you could list an APN. Unfortunately for us, the water board did not define what a cultivation site is, and they basically make reference to a cultivation site being a unique parcel. And based on my best understanding of the way that that process worked, when you were enrolling in the 2015 order, you had to list an APN, and the APN and the enrollment ultimately translated into a WDID number, which is a waste discharge ID number. It's a unique identifier that establishes a location of a cultivation site. Subsequently, later on, when the state adopted the state general order, there was the ability to list multiple APNs and have adjacent parcels listed or associated with a singular WDID, where historically the WDID was issued to a specific site and a singular APN, because that was the process. That's, I think, a good bit of the background. I'm sure you have questions for me, but I'll pause there. And
Can you repeat that last part that you had? You said there when the state adopted their order, there was an opportunity then to submit multiple sites. No, you said a specific site with a singular APN.
Right, so if you look at the original enrollment package under the 2015 order, there's only the ability to add one APN. If you look at the current application under the state general order, you can list multiple APNs if those APNs are contiguous. What that means is that when you enroll in the water board program, you are getting a WDID, waste discharge ID, which is a unique identifier that identifies your cultivation site as a location in their database. So to the best of my understanding, for the 2015 order, if one wanted to have multiple parcels enrolled, you would have had to have applied for each of those individual parcels separately under the 2015 order and get unique WDIDs. Then at some point, when the state adopted the state general order, there was the ability to get a WDID established for multiple APNs. So that was the main difference, if that helps. If you have technical or clarifying questions, I'm here
Quick
for you.
question.
Yes.
During that time when multiple APNs could be listed, if they were listed in a contiguous, like as kind of one operating unit, did each one of those get a single identifier or of the WDID, or did each one of them get their own?
So specific to the 2015 order, which is what is listed in the limitations code section, there was a singular WDID associated with a singular APN.
Okay, and then later, if you applied, when that became relevant and you applied for that, then you were able to say, I have a 10 acres, but it is 2 APN units. It's 2 separate properties as identified by the county. I want both of those to be listed and function as a single plantation site or grow site or farming site.
Right, and again, and I can pull up the specific language if it's helpful as we get into it, but there's really only one reference in the 2015 order to cultivation site.
Okay,
And so
it's considered a waste discharge.
it's a waste discharge, it's a
ID.
waste discharge ID that is applied, but a cultivation site is associated with a parcel.
Not
So-
the WD, okay.
It's associated with a parcel and then a WDID applied once enrollment is gained. And
Okay,
so under the 2015 order, if you had a cultivation site by Trinity County definition
Mhm.
that spanned multiple APNs, my understanding is you would have had to list
each,
and
AP
enroll separately each APN.
okay, understood. Thank you.
So I know we've had multiple conversations about this, which always end with, thank you, Drew, that's clear as mud. But one more thing I want to clarify or try to is we are here in large part trying to look at how these particular things that you're mentioning about the water board enrollments apply to our code. The state water board didn't create their code for us. We're using their code in some way in our code. So what is the purpose and intent of that enrollment outside of Trinity County?
The purpose and intent of that enrollment is to do with environmental impacts related to cultivation sites and waste discharge from those sites.
And so if anywhere in California you're going to cultivate, you have to have that enrollment?
Correct?
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure it's really clear, and it's specific to cannabis.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I just want to make sure. Okay? I'm sure I'll have more questions later, but.
All right, do we have any?
So at this time, you'd want to invite the appellant or anyone on their behalf?
Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Logan and members of the board. Jim Underwood, on behalf of the appellant, Michelle Taylor, both Michelle and her husband James are here as well this morning. I'm not going to take a lot of time to reiterate what I stated in my letter on behalf of the appellant. But I want to highlight just a couple of things. The appellant's position is basically as has been recommended by staff. There are a lot of reasons for that, some of which are detailed a great deal more in my letter. But basically, the issue is what when the section in question that provides exceptions to this very general and broad prohibition against cannabis in the opt-out areas in 17, what does the exception language mean by reference to the water board order? And I mistakenly referred to the wrong order in my letter, but the staff report is absolutely correct. It's the 2015-23 order that was incorporated and is explicitly stated in your ordinance. The simple question then is, now what happened by way of changes to that order thereafter? But what was required as of the date of the county's ordinance by reference to the 2015 order? And that order, as just explained, required that applicants enroll, and the application form is explicit in asking for a single APN and resulting in the issuance of this WDID, this ID number that verifies enrollment. So applicants could have enrolled multiple assessors parcels numbers, which would be the criteria for this very narrowly defined exception to the county's general prohibition. So the question is, whether or not on an application basis, there was parcel specific, APN specific enrollment as of the stated date in 2017. And that's just pretty clear. If the board wants to modify that policy, it's a matter of amending the ordinance. It's not anything beyond that. Now, the applicant isn't encouraging that, but that's a different process than here today. There are, as stated, this is just an interpretation of the ordinance. There are very real illustrations of why this is important. Ripple Creek Cabins is a very good illustration of what could happen if the ordinance is effectively changed by a contrary interpretation, because enrolled parcels as of 2017 were not on their doorstep on the effective date that the ordinance requires. And yet, if there's a change here, contiguous parcels with an expansive interpretation of this ordinance could allow substantial modification and be on their doorsteps and in ways unanticipated by business owners who invested a great deal. So it's important. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I'd like to reserve the ability to respond to any comments at the end of the public comment period. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any public comment in the room?
Hi, Board. Brad Vogel, Eagle Creek Ranch.
Good morning.
Good morning. So a couple points I'd like to make. The first thing we did was ask for direction from staff when we started this process 4.5 years ago. We got direction that it would be okay to move. The way the ordinance is written, our entire ranch, which we bought all at the same time, the previous owners had a license, is considered one parcel. And hearing that there was only the opportunity to put one parcel on the original thing explains a lot to me, because I didn't understand what was going on. But the only parcel being discharged at the time was the parcel 19 where it was, which is in the shade. It's a horrible spot. The greenhouses collapsed. The previous owners went bankrupt, and that's why it was for sale. So for us to repeat that same mistake doesn't make any sense to me. And this was when the market was good. Now the market is horrible. But the first thing we did was ask for direction. We said, would it be acceptable to move? This is the way that we're reading the code. The code says that contiguous parcels will be treated as one parcel. We own 5 parcels. So when the 2015 order came out, there was no need for them to pay the water board 5 times for one parcel because the discharge was on that parcel. It does not define drying or any of that other activities that would be involved in that. But the first thing we did was ask staff. We've been working hand in hand with the county for 4.5 years on this project. We've spent a ton of time and a ton of money. And now we get to the very end. There's no environmental reason why this project can't move forward. We've been told the whole time. We've had every agency out. Every single one comes to the site. They understand why we want to move. We can't grow vegetables and cannabis in the shade on a rocky flat. If we did that, we would have to use an insane amount of electricity. We could put 240,000-watt lights on that rocky flat. We don't want to do that. We want to grow cannabis and vegetables in the sun. We have an amazing spot. We don't need to import anything. We don't need to modify the environment. We have sun, we have soil, and we have water. And we want to be able to use it without creating a factory farm in the shade and doing something that we don't want to do.
Thank you very much. Do you have any more public comment in the room? Good morning.
Morning, Rhoda Kane, Trinity Center. So I can't afford to keep printing the petition over and over again. I know I've turned it in 7 or 8 times to the county, so I know you've all seen it. I am going to read a little bit of the text again, though. The people in our community that signed it said they believe our facilities should have the equal rights and responsibilities as any other farm in the county. They do not believe we're having negative impacts on a family-friendly recreation-based economy or that they are a nuisance to our community, and they do not believe that we will destroy the character and integrity of our community, which is the wording on the petition that created the opt-out zone, just to be clear. The supervisors have already decided that those of us in the opt-out zone should be allowed to transfer our licenses, which means we transfer our water board paperwork to the next owner. The supervisors have already decided that we should be allowed to rearrange our farms as long as it fits into our approved CEQA. All of this has already been decided. So God forbid something horrible were to happen to Matt and he could not continue to operate. If I don't think it's too much to ask. I don't think it's outrageous at all for me to think that I should be able to get the license in my name and continue operating on my property if my partner isn't with me anymore. I don't think that's too much to ask. I think transfers and moving has already been decided. We've already been through this so many times, and here we are again. The ordinance only has one definition for legal parcel. There is no separate definition for legal parcel in an opt-out zone. Grandfather status has never been tied to actively operating a farm. And as far as the water board changing from one enrollment APN to more, they just updated their info to fit the regulations. All they did was upgrade their portal. They didn't change any rules. They just updated their portal. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. Marisa Maresh, Eagle Creek.
Can you put the mic closer to you?
Sure. This issue before you will determine the success or failure of our project.
We feel like we have not misinterpreted the ordinance. We read it as it was written, got clarification that we are reading it correctly, then move forward with the blessing of the county. No loopholes and no misinterpretations. You have a choice to not go along with this, just like your planning commission did not agree with this appeal's interpretation after spending over 5 hours hearing public comment and deliberating on this matter. In our case, the time for bringing a problem up with the language in your code would have been at the beginning, not the end of this process. We asked for clarification and made sure moving location was acceptable with the county's rules in the spring of 2021. We have been working in lockstep with the county and doing everything they asked of us ever since to make sure this project was a success. Every agency has been out and signed off. The county planner working on our project let us know we have completed everything on our end and that he recommended approval. We have done everything Trinity County has asked of us for over 4.5 years in order to operate a legal business. We're very proud of what we have planned for our property, which is a beautiful, regenerative, organic farm. We feel our business success will have a positive effect on the community. Voting in favor of this appeal will undermine not only all our hard work, but the work of many other people that have been engaged in this process. Your staff, the Water Board, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and my wonderful consultants at Flora. My husband and I are the owners of a beautiful historic agricultural ranch property. This property has been doing business for over 160 years. So if we are being sensitive to existing businesses, please be sensitive to ours. The crops and animals have changed over the years based on the needs and wants of the time and the owners of the property, and this is no different. Please treat my business the same as a vineyard, which is a very appropriate correlation. There is nothing wrong with what we are trying to do. The next generation has not lived with the same unjust biases that have stemmed from misinformation campaigns. People want and appreciate what we have to offer. Please don't go along with this appeal's interpretation, which goes against what is written in the code. Contiguous parcels shall be treated as one parcel. There is no reason to further restrict opportunities in this county. Please uphold the Planning Commission's decision and please direct the Planning Department to issue our permit. And one last thing, please get rid of this 97,000 acre opt-out in the North Lake. Opt-out economics is a fail.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, board and chair and all the staff here. Matthew Jefferson. I have a licensed cannabis farm in Coffee Creek. I very much want to reiterate everything that Marisa and Brad have been saying. I think they hit a lot of points on all that with Rhoda. I've been coming here talking about trying to keep my tax-paying business open for 9 years. I can't even imagine the amount of money that this county has had to spend to continue to argue about whether or not we're going to allow tax-paying businesses to operate in our county when we're in an economic deficit. This opt-out zone and this resolution, it's completely dismissing that cannabis farmers have been historically, multi-generationally a part of every aspect of Trinity County, from downriver to North County to South County, Douglas City, and everywhere in between. We all know this. I know we've been in the hills and this is the time that we're coming out, but we've never had the opportunity to even try to license our cannabis farms in North Lake. At the last community meeting that I know a couple of you were present at, we had many members of our community say we never had a vote on this. And the simple fact is that this opt-out zone was an urgency ordinance put in that said that legal cannabis farmers were going to jeopardize the health and human safety of our community. And our community does not believe that to be true. It also states that we are a nuisance to the community. I do not understand how a licensed tax-paying business is a nuisance to the community.
And there may be like 10 people that are very against cannabis, and I don't think they'll ever change their mind. But I think we should be supporting any tax-paying business that wants to come in here. And I really hope that we can get something put on the agenda to discuss the removal of the opt-out zone in Trinity Center and Coffee Creek. It's not warranted. There's no factual environmental finding on why it should be there. 97,000 square acres covering all different types of zoning districts. And the reason we can't have our licensed tax-paying businesses is because I'm a nuisance. Me and my wife are the founders and operators of Farmers Market in North Lake, the first farmers market that's been there. We sell organic produce to the school, the stores. We support the community in every aspect that we can. Look at the front page of the newspaper right now. Humboldt Nation across the front page of the paper. They came and sponsored an event in Lewiston to support our community and show that we care. We're cannabis farmers, but we're part of this community too. We deserve to be here.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Good morning.
Good morning, Chris Williams, Weaverville. I haven't spoken for here a long time. But the board and the planning commission get creative time and time again when it comes to interpreting our codes, especially for businesses that this county wants to support. And that's the problem. That's why we're here. Most people don't want to support commercial cannabis. Marisa and Brad, who I've known now for 4 or 5 years, they've gone above and beyond to ensure that their property meets every single requirement of our cannabis ordinance. They've done everything asked for them. They've called all the people. They've made sure that every single step that they took was something that was within code, that's so that they could move forward. And alas, we're still here. 5 years later, still having the same debate, still forcing them to fight for something that they've long since earned through compliance and cooperation. At what point do we just stop moving the goalpost and start supporting the people who are following the rules? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment in the room? Good morning.
Morning. Vidette Vanderweide, Lewiston. I'm shocked that we have to stand here and talk about ambiguity and, how difficult it is just to be transparent in our decisions, in our codes, in our ordinances. Why are they so damn hard? Why does it take so many people to come to a decision and everybody comes up with a different interpretation of the code? Everybody comes up with a different interpretation of what they think it means. We put opt-outs where they really are kind of illegal to have. It blows my mind. It blows my mind that this is where we are in county governance. I know personally that if this were anything else, like a cell phone tower, who doesn't have all the pertinent permits that are required, they get to stay open and they get to do business. Billion-dollar corporations get to do business while they quietly go get the permits they didn't get when they were supposed to get them. But our cannabis farmers, the people who depend on these businesses, they get shut down for ambiguity because you all can't make clear decisions and choices in your ordinances. Let's be a little bit more widened in our perspective. Let's take our mindsets that are built on misinformation and, quite frankly, outdated programs of cannabis and how dangerous it is. Let's talk about the opioids our healthcare system is putting out. Let's talk about all the problems that are going on in the world that have nothing to do with cannabis. And let's give Trinity County a chance. Let's give our farmers a chance. I worked at the county and I had to stand face to face as the face of the county, which was a really hard thing to do every single day. And look at Marissa in her eyes and be like, I think you're going to be good. Because that's what we were taught. That's what we were shown. And then here we are, as Chris said, here we are, all this time now, and they got to sit and question whether or not their investments of time and energy get to move them down the future, or do they get to figure out what the hell comes next when y'all can't figure out what to do with your ordinances? Let's make the right decision here. Let's open our minds. Let's give somebody a chance. Please, just give somebody a chance in this career and in this industry, and let them be free to farm.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Good morning.
Good day. Edward Ochoa, private citizen. For the record, brief background. I've been a part of the labor organizations for over 35 years between the IBEW and IM, International Association of Machinists. I'm also a certified ganjier, which is a first of its kind program, which is a sommelier program that's much like wine, but for cannabis. And I've been advocating for this plant and for farmers for well over 25 years, speaking in front of San Diego councils, even to Nevada, and advocating for tourism and understanding to break down the stigma of negative mentality of this plant. And I see the future is in tourism, and people want to partake in it, much like wine. And we should really try to lessen the restrictions and embrace people who are wanting to do it the right way. I see water is one of the signature healers in your county here. And most of these people that are legal, are regenerative, are very conscious of their water waste and how they take care of the plant and the planet. And I asked and appeal to the board to open your mind to the growth opportunities and not to be limited by the stigmas that have been fear-mongered in the past. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment in the room? Good morning.
Good morning again. Chair, Supervisors, Lisa Wright, Lewiston. I'm going to focus on the staff recommendations because I don't agree with the interpretation. I think that's what's being recommended to you. First off, states in light of the history and specific allowance for historical sites appearing to be the purpose behind this, there wasn't any requirement that you have a historic site to enroll in the water board. It was a political concession, an appeasement that was done with the anti-cannabis people to get an urgency ordinance on the books to allow commercial cannabis farmers some form of legal approach. It was before recreational was allowed in the state of California as well. Large swaths of parcels, as they said, 90-some thousand square acres, that's just North Lake. Many ag zoned were pulled in to this. It depended on who your neighbor was, not what the valid purpose of your parcel should be. It was done under the guise of a health and human public safety emergency when none existed. But you know what? The farmers at the time went along with it because we wanted an ordinance. None of you were sitting here, maybe Amanda, during all of the deliberation back in 2016, the urgency ordinance. I came in right at that point when the carve-outs, I'm like, what is going on with this? If you were to approach this practically, what is the difference between one parcel and a contiguous one that might be better suited for the operations and potentially have less environmental impact? There's really no factual basis for saying you can't go next door, especially given the definitions under our own ordinance. Additionally, applicants were told by staff, dating back to documented to 2021, that surrounding parcels were okay to pull in. People invested tens of thousands of dollars in moving forward based on what they relied on from the county staff. And this continued up until October of 2024. Something's just not right, you know, with now suddenly we can't understand, it's not clear to us when this is the direction staff had been taking for 5 years, 9 years. The other question is regarding the limitation on square footage for canopy, not being able to now exceed on those enrollments, the square footage listed. Back then there was up to 5,000, up to 10, above 10. There weren't any licenses to associate with it. So now limiting that really should not be based on the enrollment. It should be based on your CEQA document and what's been accepted as having less than environmentally significant impact. That's what this should really all be about. What I'm going to ask is that you direct staff to do an accurate land use analysis of the existing carve-outs and bring back an ordinance update to the Planning Commission for consideration, one based on solid planning and actually land use considerations, not NIMBYism, not political appeasement. That was 9 years ago. We need to bring this current. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Tom Belenko, Douglas City. I, like many of the people here, have been involved in regulation since it started. If I can own one sentence in all of the ordinances that have been enacted since 2016, it's this one. This used to be called the Belenko Compromise when it mattered. I didn't come up with it. I was in a meeting with some of the people that became TAA, and I was a cultivator, and we were discussing the lock that was preventing an urgency ordinance from being enacted. This is not October 3rd, 2017. This is August 2016. That's when this language is from. And in that conversation, we just plucked it out of the air. I was the first one who said it, so they said I came up with it, but it came out of a conversation between all the groups when we all used to talk about what would be best for the county. And it was an exemption. If you were enrolled in the water board, you were exempt. Not that you had all these conditions placed on, those came later, but in all of those carve-out expansions, if you call them, this exemption has been preserved. We've had those discussions. And I'd go back in the staff report from the 2015 water board order that we're discussing, section C of attachment 1, it says cannabis cultivation site and contact information. For cannabis cultivation general order coverage, if your site is located on more than one parcel and the parcels are not contiguous, AKA next to each other, you must submit a separate application for each non-contiguous site. Well, what does that say if the sites are contiguous? You submit one enrollment, just like what applies here. This is not ambiguity. This is not, this is an ordinance update. It doesn't fit what the definition of ambiguity is. It's totally valid for the board to consider updating this ordinance, but it should do it the right way. Have a public hearing. We need our ordinance updated. This is not the way to do it. And if this wasn't applicable to Eagle Creek Ranch, we wouldn't be here. So I don't think this is the right process. I don't think there's an ambiguity. And if there is any doubt, the water board order applied to an address and a discharger. That's what the language they used. We didn't talk about parcels back then. We do now. So if you want to update the ordinance, do it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? On Zoom?
Adrian Keys.
Good morning, supervisors and staff. Adrian Keys from Hayfork. I hope my microphone's working better this time. I have to say, I agree with the majority of everything that I've heard in the last number of commenters, specifically the last two about the process that we're in here. And again, this has spun from being a discussion of like a clarity thing. You know, it's inevitable that we end up discussing this project, which brings us to this specific ordinance, which brings us to the need for a revision or an update of that language. And yeah, that was nearly 10 years ago when that compromise was made. And I think it's safe to say that everyone knows quite a bit has changed since then. And so the answer to this question isn't to continue to build layers of regulation up on a shaky foundation. We need to go back and address the core of this. And when we do, I hope that we can dismiss a lot of the language that I read in the opposition letters, the appellant's letters about the dangerous characters that are your employees and the water theft and all those things. This is a regulated farm. This is a business. Those things may exist in some arenas, but they do not exist in this one. That's why people come forward. When we do get to discussing this in the future, I do hope that we can stick to land use and not sway into this kind of historic rhetoric around criminality and such, because that era is largely gone from our community. And I think many of us would say that's a good thing. Also can't really objectively say that cannabis inherently has a negative impact on tourism. I think that could be argued, fairly adequately when we do get to this point in time. But these are all reasons why we just need to bring this back to its core and really discuss what the issue is here. And I would support Lisa Wright's request for an ordinance or for a agenda item. I think that was perfectly well stated. That's essentially the way I feel about this also, is that in order to solve this problem, we have to address the actual problem and not a vague or ambiguous piece of code and that's 10 years old and needs an update. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elise Hazard.
We can't hear you.
Elise, are you there?
There, yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank
Right
you
ahead.
so much. Good morning, Board and Chairman. I'm Elise Hazard from Trinity Center. I'm a mother of 2 young children, and I work in our local schools. I'm involved in community organizations and volunteer events. Even though I'm very ignorant and uninvolved in the cannabis industry, I'm familiar with the 2 small businesses and the people involved in my community. And I just wanted to express my enthusiastic support for our North Lake cannabis cultivators. They are active, hardworking, law-abiding, and positive members of our community. So I want to encourage you to uphold what the county staff and planning commission has originally decided and laid out. It would be such a shame for these small businesses to continue to be challenged, and they contribute so much to our economy, and every small business in Trinity County, and especially in the North Lake, is I think just crucial to our future prosperity. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Mark.
Good morning. I appreciate your time, Board. My name is Mark Neer, Covington Mill, as well as Trinity Center. Been paying taxes in the county since 2005. There's some things that I think that aren't being discussed here that I'm concerned with as well. We're in one of the poorest counties in the state, as you know. The fact that we aren't encouraging businesses here, the fact that we don't support new businesses here, the fact that we don't have our doors open wide as we can to new businesses within this county so that we can generate some more money, so that we can fix the roads, so we can have some of those things done that we need to do, to me is appalling. We need those doors wide open, right? Some of the things that our time and effort and energy has been spent on uselessly that we could do to promote some other things within this county that's going to bring people here, that's going to bring the tourism here, that's going to keep the water here. When I bought my property, the lake was full. For 15 plus years, the lake was empty. Now we have 2 straight years of the lake full. People have seen what this has done. People have seen that this brings people to the community. These discussions that we're having regarding the fact that a businessman can't get started after nearly 5 years is not right on many different levels. I believe that the board should uphold the decision and disapprove the resolution by the planning commission and let this business move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Veronica Kelly Albies.
Good morning, Veronica Kelly Albies, Douglas City. I agree that 5 years being strung along is ridiculous. But I also believe that part of the reason these missteps continue to happen is people look at it and try to get creative in how to get around it until the rubber meets the road. And it's like, hold on a second. I think that the cannabis ordinance update should be brought back from underground and private. I want to participate. So does everybody in that room and all that's hearing this. We want to be part of that progress moving forward. And if the Trinity Center area is deemed appropriate for agriculture and cannabis, then that needs to be discussed, but it needs to be done in the proper way. I had sent in some thoughts that I had regarding non-conforming use, because once that exception got created, those became non-conforming, approved non-conforming uses. And what language do we have in our current codes? There's language in there that helps guide what this is, how this should be. And that's why I support staff's report and recommendation. It's been vetted by them. And every other time it's like, oh, listen to the staff, until it doesn't fit somebody's narrative or need or something. And I've been part of that. I've been at that end of it as well. So I got it. I do think we need to continue to progress the cannabis industry to a viable business industry within Trinity County. But we all come at this from the bubble that we experience and interpret every day. What happens in my bubble doesn't happen in somebody else's bubble, what we know and believe. And when we all come out going, everybody thinks this and nobody thinks that, it comes from our bubble. And I think that's why it's important to open it up and really visit those cannabis ordinances. Let us all have the discussion. And your bubble has to be neutral. It should be. The planning commissioners should be neutral. There's appearances of that maybe not so neutral. And I think we need to get back to that. So I support the recommendation by the staff based on what our ordinance is, how it's put. There's some ambiguity, but I believe that everything that they've submitted and that others have submitted for your consideration, uphold it in their interpretation. So thank you for listening, and let's bring those cannabis ordinance updates back into the light instead of taking them underground. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Brower.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Back in 2015, 2016, 2017, when the first North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board discharge waiver came out, there was, it was very early on, and it was actually Trinity County cases that were brought to light where they had cultivation that were straddling APNs, where the water board realized the need to open it up to greater than one APN. And there are many historic ranches throughout the North Coast region, including Trinity, that have multiple parcels that are considered basically one working ranch. And so it was at the time that the Trinity County Urgency Ordinance and the first iteration of the permanent ordinance only allowed for one single application per ownership entity. And so there was also a period of time in Trinity County when it was impossible to apply for greater than one APN. And so it took some time for the county and the water board and eventually the state to work through that and allow for multiple APNs. And that's why
We lost you there, John.
Freeze his time. Can you freeze his time?
I got it. John, are you there? About 30 seconds.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Go right ahead.
All right, sorry about that. I'm not sure how much that you missed, but both the county and the water board only allowed for a single parcel at that time. And it later got remedied to allow for multiple parcels, to allow for straddling parcels that operations that might straddle multiple parcels and things like that. But the area of our ordinance that defines legal parcel reads legal parcel means a parcel with a distinct and separate assessor's parcel number, where contiguous legal parcels are under identical ownership by an individual or an entity. Such legal parcels shall be counted as a single parcel for purposes of this chapter. So that part is crystal clear. I don't see an ambiguity there. And I don't really see the ambiguity in the rest of this action item before you today. I would recommend you go with what the Planning Commission came up with, where they've dealt with this, for years and years and years now. And, stop moving the goalposts. This has been the policy for a long time. And, try to follow the ordinance. And, changing the ordinance is a separate subject. That's not what we're here to do today. But thank you all for your time. And
Thank you very much, John.
the ordinance
Appreciate
is
it.
clear.
Have a good day. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else on Zoom?
I show no other raised hands.
Take a break.
You want a break? Take a break. Take 10 minutes. We'll be back at 10 minutes to 11. Or just that. All right, everybody ready to start again? Sorry about the delay there. Everybody have a seat and we will continue on. Okay, I think we left off with the end of public comment there, both Zoom and in room. And then I think Mr. Underwood was going to have a few comments there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make this fairly brief, but just a couple of comments on notes I took based on the comments by members of the public. You know, the staff report addresses this, but there is a difference between the legal parcel definition and its intentions and this more specific exception to the opt-out prohibition. And I think it's properly described there. You'll recall that legal parcel did have some importance, particularly in the context of whether or not there was a residence that would be associated with a grow. That's a good example of how it's useful and intended, but doesn't apply here. There was a discussion about all the businesses that pay taxes, cannabis and non-cannabis alike, and that's absolutely true. And this is a very good example of Ripple Creek Cabins is a tax contributing business too. And the balance that was struck, I think Mr. Blanco, you know, addressed the issue that there was a compromise. The compromise was language that made clear you had to be enrolled as of, in this case, in Trinity Center, November 30 of 17. Either you're enrolled or you're not. And the enrollment from the Water Board, as folks in this room know, specifies an APN and an address, a street address consistent with that APN. To widen that, to broaden that is inconsistent with the clear language referring to the 2015 order. It was also indicated that, you know, kind of in the same vein, that you should have specificity. Well, board orders for purposes of interpreting how this is applied does have specificity. They specify an APN and they specify a specific address. So there really isn't any uncertainty there. And really what we're wanting for all concerned is certainty. So again, if the board wants to modify that policy, that's an amendment to the ordinance and a whole different process. I agree that the owners of property adjoining my clients ought to be able to proceed, but they ought to be able to proceed consistent with those rules and to cultivate on the parcels that were actually enrolled. And I don't have further comments.
Thank you very much.
Invite staff to conclude if they have any additional comments.
Well, I think that the issue before us is related to the interpretation of this code section. And that's really what I hoped to gain via an ambiguity determination at the Planning Commission level. So I would be pleased if the board wants to engage in discussion related to how to interpret this code section. I think that's all I can offer, and I'm of course here to answer any questions you guys might have in terms of the information presented in the staff report.
So I'd like to be clear, if I could, on exactly what it is that's being asked of us today. Because as I reviewed the Planning Commission meetings, the agendas that they were speaking to, there were specific questions asked by staff and then a suggested resolution for their consideration. But as they came to the conclusion that they did, we land here today not just with that question coming for our interpretation, we come to it through a lens of a specific situation. So are we being asked today to only address the question that came to the planning commission, and that's it? And then as a result of that, outcomes happen? Or are we being asked to look at this specific situation?
So the particular situation is not before you. In other words, you're not deciding whether or not a license gets issued or not issued. This was a request by staff to the Planning Commission for resolution of ambiguity that they saw within the code. I agree that this process is clear as mud at the current time because it's a strange appeal. In other words, it's really the ultimate result from the Planning Commission was just not voting for the resolution. Not voting for that resolution does not necessarily mean that the converse of that resolution is true. So I think what you're left with is addressing the request of staff either for ambiguity. You've also heard it could come back in the form of whether or not you want to amend the code versus making this decision now about the ambiguity in the code. If you make the decision, and this is a policy decision, it's not a legal decision, the policy decision will have legal precedent, of course. So if you do make a determination about what this means, then that will carry going forward until you legislate otherwise. So does that answer your question, Supervisor Cox?
It does, thank you.
I just want to clarify because one little part of your statement threw me off there. You said it's a policy decision, not a legal decision. But
Correct. The policy decision being how you interpret your own ordinance.
Okay. Which still should be coming back to the ordinance, which is the law and how you interpret that law. And that's what staff is seeking. And so now we're looking for the board to say, how do we interpret it?
How are you going to provide direction to staff, either by making a determination about that ambiguity or direction to bring it back in a different format?
Okay. Well, I just, in respect for this process that we're going through, I want to make sure that I acknowledge some information that was gathered outside of this meeting, because I know usually in these hearings, you're in a quasi-judicial role. You're supposed to make your decision based on what you hear and saw only in the room, and or presented in the staff report and so forth. I just want to acknowledge I spent probably a couple of hours out with the applicants that have spoken here today, and people have spoken on their behalf and toured their property and saw where the original cultivation site was and where the desired cultivation site was and the reasons for that and so forth. And then had a call also from the appellants, and we didn't spend 2 hours, but we spent a little bit of time talking about their perspective and their concerns as well. So I just wanted to make that clear that I'd been in receipt of that exposure to additional information.
If I can just add, Supervisor Lutweiler, if there's anything that you have gained information about, either your discussions with the applicant or the appellant that has not been presented here today, I think disclosure of that information would be useful to the public and to the board.
Let me think on that. I mean, certainly in 2 hours, I was able to hear more than was allowed in a few minutes of public comment. But I think the gist primarily was there. I guess staying on that side, there was more in depth about what about the original site was a challenge? Why was that not a sustainable way to go forward? Why was the desirable place that we then visited a better place to do it for a lot of different reasons, including environmental cost, so forth. Talked about their experience in Humboldt County, which was apparently much more streamlined than here in Trinity County, which we've heard multiple times. So I think the rest is just super detailed. And then on the phone call, I think as we've kind of heard from their representative, the concerns that this change should not be allowed because it would have a negative impact on their business, but also because of the way in which it could happen. And with not only the cultivation site being moved closer, but also with the processing being very close to where their vacation rental type stuff is. And so therefore, the odor impact was the big concern, and that there had been, as we saw in the backup material, concerns about people who had voiced concerns that didn't come back, and how might that impact their business. And again, it's all, on both of those, it was, why do you want or not want? And it was helpful to hear that, as I said, to both parties. But what we have to come back to is to say, but what does the law, the rules, the policies tell us can or cannot be done? And the wants are not supposed to be incorporated at that point. So that's what I'll share.
Disclosure.
By which what I see as two issues here today can be separated and dealt with separately. Because when we make a decision based on what the staff was asking, and again, Planning Commission and now us, that potentially affects 118 different parcels. We are looking at this through the lens of multiple parcels, but one license, shall we say. And that doesn't seem, if we were to determine a certain direction on this, it's going to have a negative impact on one business or another business. And I would love to see there be a win-win to the businesses. And I'd love to have that conversation separate from us determining what this means, so that 117 other situations are not instantly changed by what is decided today. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand what you're saying, and I think that's where the direction to staff coming back with amendments to the ordinance might come into play, because any decision you make about the actual ambiguity today would have that precedential effect.
Okay.
All right, so to speak to that a little bit on the 118 prospective people that could be affected by this, I think that we all need to keep in mind now that people aren't flocking to this area to grow cannabis anymore. More people have left than are coming. And that, I don't know if it was Jim, but someone said the creeping effect of, we open this up and it's going to slide open a big window. People are not coming here in droves anymore to grow cannabis. They're leaving quicker than they're coming. And that, even though it possibly has the ramifications of affecting 118 people, I doubt it affects 5 annually. New applications, just off what I've been seeing in the last year or so of people coming and going. So I don't want the board or the public to think that we are going to see if we open up X, we're going to see just a rush of people come into that section because they can grow cannabis in that section. Those days are gone. It's not like that anymore. 10 years ago, perhaps, you bought a piece of property for $100,000, you've got a license sold for $1 million. Those days are gone. People are leaving properties, not even selling them. So that fear of opening up a huge wide door is not, I don't think, relevant at this time, that people will be just flocking here because we opened up a certain section to a possible 118 people. It just doesn't, it's not realistic to me. And I'll leave that part with that. Drew?
Chair, if I may, I just want to clarify that the original intent of this item was for the Planning Commission to provide an objective determination on an interpretation of code, not to make a subjective decision based on specific sites. So I think what we're grappling with is really the language in 1743050A7 specifically. If the board wishes to make a determination and give an interpretation of that code, that's great. You can direct staff to then bring a subsequent ambiguity determination to the Planning Commission. That's an option. Or you could also direct staff to update the ordinance to reflect what the current consensus of the board is related to that code section and how it should be administered, and no longer be an interpretation of that code, but have it ideally get to a place that's more clear than clear as mud.
But that would require a whole public / planning commission process. We can't just say as a board, we want to see it this way, go make it happen.
You can, I believe, give direction to staff to craft ordinances in a particular direction, which would then come to the planning commission as a public hearing and subsequently come to the board for 2 readings.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you that sounds really uncomfortable in the here and now. That should be a far larger discussion, in my opinion. Dan.
Okay.
Jill, how would you go about that? What is your steps to get to where you'd like to be on that?
Well, at the last meeting, when we were talking about the budget, comments were made about if we had more cannabis business, we'd have more tax revenue and so forth. And I had asked if there could be an analysis, a cost-benefit analysis of moving those cannabis ordinance updates sooner, because we've been way back 2 or 3 years ago where we're doing them all right now, and we've got an ad hoc working really hard week after week, and then it just dies. And no, we're not doing it now because general plan's coming and that's the better time to do it. So that process gets delayed. And so then we're feeling the delay. And so then it's kind of the push to no, we should do it. And then there's a pause again. And I get the reasons on both sides of that. That's why I kind of wanted to see the analysis. But something like this certainly puts some weight on one side of those scales. So to ask what order I think it ought to come in, I want it based on fact. And so, to spin our wheels and create something that then we end up paying our consultants even more because we've created another can of worms that now has to be reconciled with what they are doing. It's got to mesh, and this is challenging at best. But what I think that we need to do is answer the question that the Planning Commission, in my observation, didn't answer. They came back with a motion that failed, which I don't see there having been an outcome. So you're asking for the same thing. And so to separate the situation from the ask feels like our job today. And then further direction would be, how do we go about solving what a community wants? Does this get incorporated into their community plan? Because this is how they predominantly see themselves.
So if I may just ask for some clarity on that direction. In terms of a cost-benefit analysis, what I could bring forward are, sections of code that are being considered to be changed or that require change because in this case, they're not clear to staff who are charged with interpreting and administering them. So I could bring back a list of code sections and I could do my best to provide a cost-benefit analysis in terms of the economic benefits. Is that what you're suggesting, or more broadly, in terms of the community perception, potential impacts to individuals, and also, some economic analysis?
Well, yeah. And I mean, ultimately, the conversation, I think, is between you and the CAO to decide how do we most effectively move this forward without adding more costs to our folks and adding more costs to our consultants in that larger process. But for the answer today, and this is a tough place to be, but we have to take one bite of the apple at a time. And today's answer is to say, what does the code say? And then my goal is to not make a decision that sets a new precedent that suddenly opens up a whole nother huge can of worms. And so I'm going to put a motion on the table that says that we uphold the staff recommendation and the resolution that was set forward, and that we are interpreting today the way that this was created in 2017. And then if we want to change that, let's change it thoughtfully, collectively, with all of the conversation and all of the ramifications of that, And let's do that expediently because people have been delayed and people have been what they feel is misled, which neither of which are fair. So there's a motion.
I'd like to make a comment first.
I have a motion. Does it get a second?
Do it. No.
I'll make a second for
Go ahead.
discussion.
Go ahead, Julia, then, for discussion.
We put a planning commission together, right? And they are tasked with the job of the issues that come before them. We trusted them. I appointed one who's very capable. And they did make a decision. They made a decision to deny the appeal, right? They made that decision. I'm going to stand by that decision. And what happens with the license, you know, I think these people have been through a crazy amount of things. They've done what they're supposed to do, and I'm hoping that we can uphold the commission's stand, and then to hopefully get this license put through. That's my opinion on it. I'm done with the, you know, treatment.
So just for clarification, and
Yeah.
Drew, you can help me out if I'm incorrect since I was not there. The only thing that was before the Planning Commission, there was no appeal before the Planning Commission at
It's
this
here
time?
now.
There was it's here now.
It's here
The
now.
only thing before the Planning Commission was Drew's request for clarification or ambiguity determination. Is that correct?
We brought to the planning commission was an ambiguity determination item with a resolution attached that referenced staff's interpretation of code and asked for a clarification on how to understand and administer that code section per the intent of the board.
Right, and the commission did vote on something that they thought it was not ambiguous, that it was just fine, but that was retracted, right? So what happens now if we send it back to the commission where it belongs? What is the next step?
Certainly one of the options for today could be that you direct staff to bring an updated ambiguity determination to the planning commission with a resolution and detail what your specific interpretation of that code is to be included in that ambiguity determination. That's one option.
Yeah,
Chair.
I do think that's a very good option to make this less clear than the mud that it is now. That I would bring this back to staff, ask for this ordinance to be brought back with a little bit more clarity than it is now.
They are asking us for
Options.
clarity.
Right.
They're
Right,
asking us to give them clarity. So giving it back to them to say, bring us back more clarity is
We're
defeating.
here on an appeal, so we can deny the appeal. The commission is where it belongs, right? I think.
If
I'm
I
sorry
might,
to
Chair.
talk over.
So I think to say there is not ambiguity is really hard to justify when you're sitting in this room and we've heard very different opinions. We've had 3 different directors of the cannabis division from the time that the particular application that we keep referring to, even though that's not the subject of our discussion today, began and today. So already perhaps unclear, 3 different directors. There'll be another director at some time in the future as well. And so we're leaving this up to individuals to continually try to figure out when even the people in this room can't all agree on it. So I think it's our responsibility, because the buck stops here. Staff brought it to the planning commission. They basically wouldn't support the clarity, but they didn't provide any clarity. And so now they're asking us to provide clarity. Whichever way the board leans on it, they're asking for us to provide clarity so they can move forward, so that these applicants, the other applicants that could be affected by this direction, can know what's coming. If we just come back to staff and say, oh, well, you know what, go rewrite the ordinance in a way that you think is really, really clear, and let's do it that way, we can, but let's talk about what that timeline means to folks. That means you've got to give time to rewrite the ordinances. You've got to give time for public notice, public discussion. You've got to take it back to the planning commission. You got to take it back to the board. And we're talking 6 months from now
And I'm thinking the
at a
future.
good pace.
The future is a better time to do that, right? To make that clarity, and whatever's in front of you right now should happen, because the clarity is not clear. If you think, saying it's not clear right now, then what's on paper,
So let's be clear what
Decision.
you're saying. If you're saying, okay, so it's clear enough, go make your decision. Staff has said what their decision
and then
is.
we change it. Well, staff's recommendation, right? That's staff recommendation. It's being challenged here.
I know, but that's why they're asking us. Do
Right,
you agree with
exactly.
it or not? And you're saying
yeah,
no.
I'm saying, well, no. I'm saying that the planning commission was headed with that decision. They made that decision. And if we want to make it clear, right? What happens to this license? Like, I think that anything we do from this point on, after this license is approved or not.
This
by the-
license and the approval of that license are not on the table for
Right.
discussion.
No, but it
currently.
isn't. It is.
And,
it is.
and regardless of which way the board decides on this item, it will come back to staff for approval. It will have its due process afforded to it. So once the director, myself, makes a decision on the license, it can then be subsequently appealed to the planning commission. Again, the planning commission decision can be appealed to the board. So we are not taking action on any specific project, nor does the choice that you make today result in the final determination on any specific project.
And I just want to be clear. If we choose to do what the planning commission did, we just say, we don't support this resolution. We are leaving staff to implement as they believe it should be implemented. That's what we're doing. And staff has already said that this is what they believe. So if we don't give them something different, then they would do what they're doing. Or we, so one way or another, they need the clarity from us. And if you don't give them clarity, then they're going to move forward as they currently see fit. So to me, it doesn't do any good to do what the planning commission did. It doesn't do any good to repeat that process and leave them sitting there saying, okay, we'll go forward with the ambiguity and we'll just see how things play out. But we have a motion on the table and discussion about that. If somebody wants to make a counter motion, we have that discussion.
So right now, we're looking for a second on Julia's, correct?
She didn't make a motion. Well, so we can continue with the discussion on this one. So what I want to make sure that we're clear on is, again, we're not talking about any particular application. We're talking about the code and the application of the code. And what I'm hearing from staff is that at the time that the opt-outs, and wrong terminology for that, at the time, those originals, there was this Belenko compromise, which said, well, if you have this water board registration, then you would be allowed to continue operation within that opt-out. If you don't, then you can't. Is that a fair assessment of that
Yes.
part? Okay.
Yes.
And then staff's perspective is that the water board specifically asked for an APN to be registered. And that APN registered at that time when these went into place is what was allowed for the exception to remain active. And that the water board in general, if they're, we're talking about a discharge permit or whatever, right? And what that means is, for this site that you have come to me about, I am granting you that permit. And so I don't know how the water board could be expected to approve a bunch of other parcels that they didn't consider in an application for a specific APN. So to me, that I would think that's specific Supervisor Carpenter Harris was on the water board, so she would be able to provide more information. And so when I look at those two pieces, they tell me that the interpretation of what staff is putting forward is accurate. Now, I can tell you, having spent the time out at the ranch, if I owned that property, I'd want to do exactly the same thing that they want to do. It makes perfect sense to me. And if I owned the business next to it, I wouldn't want it moving closer to me. I wouldn't want the processing facility right next to it because of the odor. And not because of bigotry or anything else, because of odor impact on the land use of me as a business owner or property owner, or whatever. Because we always get into this, if you want to restrict it in any way, it's because you are anti-cannabis. And I just wish that as much as people that have concerns are asked to not have those biases, that the people that are in the industry would also understand biases. Because to say that someone is negatively affected by the odor of a cannabis farm, much like they could be affected by the odor of a lavender farm or a pig farm or a oat factory, which I had in Iowa, it's real. And some people like it, some people aren't bothered by it, but some people very much are, which I believe is one of the primary reasons that the opt-outs exist. It's when people, because our EIR says specifically about odor, it is, what are the terms? Drew, since we're not supposed to hear from the public right now, could you please?
Significant and unavoidable.
And we'll travel as far as?
2 or 3 miles, I believe is what it says.
Okay, so we, as a county, knowingly were amongst the time of this compromise, trying to put this thing in place that would allow for 530 sites to cultivate, knowing that odor was significant, unavoidable, and could travel 2 miles. And suddenly, surprisingly, people that don't like that odor are saying, I don't want that affecting my use of my land. I have property rights as well. And so let's do these opt-outs. Oh, okay, well, nobody likes the opt-outs, but here's a compromise. If you have this water board, then you can continue to operate there. That's my assessment of how we got to where we are. And it's not fair, it's not right for the, if I had spent the last 5 years buying an amazing property, investing I think the numbers were 200 tons, which was amazing to me, of trash that was taken away, and to do all this work and talk to people in staff and talk to the water board, pay the water board money, all these things all along the way, and be at this point is horrendous. But I'm not being asked to vote on that. I'm being asked to say, what do these codes and these policies say, and how should we be making decisions about applications like that and potentially many others as we go forward? And that's what staff is asking us to provide direction on. That's my perspective. And we need to do that. Whichever way you feel about it, we need to do that.
If I may, I just want to point out that I think really what we're grappling with is whether or not the legal parcel definition trumps the reference to water board enrollment and the fact that a singular APN needs to be applied for. That's where really, from my perspective, when this whole topic gets boiled down, that's where there's inconsistency. We have a legal parcel definition that says, and multiple contiguous parcels will be counted as one parcel for the purposes of this chapter. And we have a water board enrollment process that requires APNs to be applied. So we created conflict with our legal parcel definition against that specific language in code as it relates to the establishment or the exceptions to the limitations on location to cultivate.
But what did that say? Not today, not with updates to the water board application. We now take multiple APNs and so forth. What did it say, and what was the process on the date that this ordinance was established? So I'm asking staff.
One second.
So the the 2015 order, which is attached as backup, doesn't really attempt to clarify this process that we created in Trinity County. You know, it's a separate regulatory process. The best that I've been able to garner from it is highlighted in the attached staff report. And if you give me a sec, I'll go to it.
Yeah.
It's on page 6, I believe, or page.
6 of 34, yeah.
And what are you after, Supervisor Cox, with your question? Sorry.
What was I after?
From, he's trying to find an answer from me. I'm just trying to make sure I'm tracking with your question or what you're asking him to explain.
What I'm trying to do is keep the conversation from creeping from 2015, 16, 17, when these dates said that by this date, August 13th of 15, October 17th of 17, and so forth, you had to have your parcel enrolled with the water board in these various opt-out areas as of that date. And I guess what is kind of bothering me right now is that it's easy to start changing the conversation based on the outcome that you want. I'm trying to hold us to exactly what the words were and exactly what was agreed upon at that time. If that isn't what wants to be agreed upon today, there can be a new agreement. But as of today, what was agreed upon were these enrollment dates with an APN. If you wanted a second APN, then fill out another application, apparently.
Hang on, it's not public comment. It's not public comment. Sorry.
So the best clarification that I can offer in terms of what's included in the 2015 order is on page 6 as footnote 9, where they attempt to define cultivation area. Cultivation area, the sum of the areas of cannabis cultivation and/or operations with similar environmental effects as measured around the perimeter of each discrete cultivation area on a single parcel of land. So again, the issue is that we have parcel as a term, we have legal parcel as defined in 1743, and then to further complicate it, we have the true legal definition of a legal parcel, which is not at all consistent with what's in 1743. So I believe, again, what we're grappling with is what was the true intent of the legal parcel definition in 1743, and how does that overlay or interact with this requirement to have needed to enroll in the water board? That's how I would boil it down.
Can we know? Okay, so go with me here for just 1 second, and then I'm going to bring it back. In 2017, I have a parcel, or I have multiple parcels that are all contiguous. I have one slot on my water board order in which to stick an APN, so I just grab one, and I say I'm going to use this one. Was it at that time declared that the reason I chose this one and not this one or this one was because this is where I intended to do my cultivation?
I mean, I can't speak for the water board, but the best that I've been able to garner from all of this is that you were enrolling an existing cultivation site. Now, as to some of the public comment we've heard, you know, if that cultivation site in fact straddled 2 APNs, I do not know how the water board dealt with that or what the standard was at that time.
Could I make a second motion? Can I make a second motion? That we accept the interpretation or the law of the legal parcel listed in 17.43. So that is contiguous into one parcel. And then we advise staff to, if they wanted to change that or clarify that definition, that they can. But right now, for this purpose, I think we need to go with the written legal description of a legal parcel. And that is in 17.43. That is all contiguous parcels are considered to be one. And then we change, if you want to change the law, like I said, you change the law down the road. But right now, that's the way it's read. That's the way the county led this operation, and that's what they went on. So that's what I'm saying. That's my final.
So, and this may be more of something that Amanda should weigh in on, but from my perspective, the motion should include an action related to the appeal specifically.
Deny the appeal, and then
So your motion is to deny the appeal and adopt the definition of legal parcel to all contiguous parcels are considered one parcel for purposes of interpretation of the ordinance. Is that your
Correct.
motion?
thank you.
I will second that motion.
In discussion, one of the things that has come up during some of this was we have something in the program that says, because we require our residents for cultivation, that the residents could be on an adjoining parcel, some terminology like that. And so there's this thing of saying, well, okay, if the house, the residents can be on a different parcel, then, why can't then the cultivation be, and so forth. And I guess one of the questions that I raised in advance was to say, how do we differentiate the two? Is it the fact that we specifically called out that we would allow for housing to be on a separate parcel means that normally you would have to have it all on the same parcel, but we are acknowledging that that might not make sense. So here you can have it over here, which is to say then, didn't say, and you can swap the house and the site. It says we'll allow you, we've approved this site with a residence over here. Versus what I'm hearing from Supervisor Brownfield motion is, well, it's really all one parcel. And if the county board, everybody else at the time had felt, well, it's all one, why would there have been a need to say you can have it on an adjoining parcel? Again, I'm just trying to follow the purpose, the intent, and so, I mean, we have a legal definition. It's just that the legal definition conflicts with other aspects of the ordinance and the policies, and that's why we're being asked to provide clarity.
And further to your point, Supervisor Lutweiler, it's 17431010 that provides that definition of a legal parcel. But Drew, help me if you would. 17435050A7 provides more specificity as it relates to the opt-out and the eligibility of parcels. And where there is more specificity, that's where you have to fall.
That's my understanding, yeah. I mean, I think again, back to the reason that I tried to agendize this, to the Planning Commission for an ambiguity determination is we use terminology in A7 that is not defined, which is applicant. And so had we clearly stated in A7 or used the word legal parcel or used the word APN, then this would be more clear. But because we said an exception may be applied for an applicant who has applied for, we didn't tie our terminology together effectively, which is why we're here grappling with this currently.
But the commission, or not the commission, but the planning department led them through that process and agreed that that would be a continuous parcel, that parcel would be contiguous. I think that's what they're,
And
is that
I
true?
don't know, and in that, in that chain of communication that I've seen between the applicant's consultant and a former planning director, I am not certain that there was any contemplation of the fact that that was in an opt-out or any analysis of the applicable opt-out limit, the limitations code section. So I read it the way I read it, hence my request for an ambiguity determination.
May I?
Go ahead.
It's my understanding, based off of many years working in landscape wide projects that I completely appreciate this question within ambiguity, because the stance from which you ask it changes the way that you need the outcome to be. So from a waste discharge permit perspective, those, in my experience, have typically been based on the way a particular land use is going to impact a particular piece of property. And the way that that was issued, whether it was issued in accordance or defined by a specific land use on a specific APN, would be looked at differently than if that permit was issued on, say, a farm and tract farm from the perspective of multiple APNs functioning as a single farm unit. So the farm service agency can allow you to have a farm and ranch identification number that has a conglomerate of adjacent APNs, and it will even allow you to have a farm and ranch number that includes non-adjacent APNs based off of how that farm is operated. So you can be a dairy farmer and have 40 acres on one side of the street and pick up another 20 acres because a neighbor, sells it to you on the other side of the street, and they will view that as a single functioning farm because it's all operating within that, within that business model. But if the water board was addressing this as a single APN, then they're probably looking, based off of my experience, on how that particular land use will impact that specific site. So when you are looking to add adjoining APNs based off of a permit that was issued based off of the way a particular piece of ground will behave when discharge is applied, then I believe you run a great risk of assuming outcomes on another piece of property that may have a completely different slope, may have intermittent water course, a blue versus a blue line, and you may end up having a completely different outcome when doing the same exact thing, even though it's just maybe over the ridge or over the knoll. So in my experience, the water board, if issuing on an APN, it was meant for that to be attached to that specific piece of property. But if it was issuing in terms of a farm operation, then I can understand why it would be assumed that multiple APNs could be umbrellaed underneath of that. I also recognize that as a functioning operational behavior, the county looks at our properties in APNs. So when I pay my taxes, I pay them per property unit. And then if I have a business, I pay taxes on that business in addition for the assets that are within that. So we know that the county sees our landscapes in property owned and that have been assigned assessor parcel numbers. So those are separate. I can own many of them, but I will pay separately on each one of them. And so I completely appreciate, and as we dig through all of this, those are the types of things that are running through my mind. I also want to make a statement again that this request of us is to help staff make a decision on how to read these documents or how to interpret these documents and how to implement these documents. The decision that is made by that is not specific to the example of the farm, of the folks who've been working very, very hard to create a living. This decision isn't for or against that. It's trying to establish the ability for our staff to function within the language that we have in existence. And I believe, based off a conversation, that once we make that decision, the very next thing needs to be, we need to review this and potentially present new language, given the opportunity for the communities and everybody to have a say in how that language needs to be written. And so today's decision, the way it falls out, is not, in my mind, an intention to choose or unchoose a particular piece of property or choose or unchoose a particular type of land use. It's to help our staff understand how we believe this should be read and how it should be interpreted. And granted, that may not be what one side or the other wants, but I do think that it gives us the platform to then say, how do we do this better in the future? What worked, what didn't, and why? And how do we solve this so that we're not continually, as the gentleman who departed with frustration, walking around in circles for another 10 years? So those are my thoughts while I'm working through this. I wanted to share those with you because I think it's important to understand the way our minds work. And I thank you for letting me share the way I'm thinking on this. And um, I hope that we can do things better because we all know we were kind of building the airplane while it was flying on a lot of this stuff. And we were people were getting fired at from the ground and from the air and from everywhere. And so there are errors. There are things that could be done better. And I think that needs to be our hope for the future, regardless, whatever way we do this. But we do need, it's our responsibility. Our staff has come to us and said, we're confused. We don't know what to do. We need you to tell us what to do. And I think that's our responsibility to tell them how to interpret this and implement it. And then from that point, we can move forward in creating a better way. Thank you.
So Drew, you mentioned 3 interpretations of that water board that are, we'll say, ambiguous at this point. Is that what you would like us to come back to determination on right now? If they said contiguous building, you brought up 3 things just now that were, I'll say, ambiguous to you as to when this was being built, the airplane was being built and flying, that they put in some things that were inconsistent.
If I'm tracking on what you're referring to, I would say, yeah, the 3 things would be the legal parcel definition, and then the location and canopy size related to original historic enrollments under the 2015 order as it relates to the exception that is stated in the limitations code section.
So with that, go ahead.
And I was just gonna say, when I go back to what staff has in their report, what Planning Commission was asked to weigh in on and what staff's perspective is stated is if a cultivation site located within the areas listed in the referenced code was historically enrolled in the Water Board 2015 order, is able to, 1, add additional parcels. So if, basically that's saying 1 was registered, enrolled, can they add additional parcels from the one that was historically enrolled where the site was approved at the time? And 2, can they increase the mature canopy size, square footage beyond that, what was listed on the historical Water Board enrollment? That's specifically what they have recommended. If we said yes to that, then they know exactly. If we say something different than that, then they know exactly. But what the Planning Commission said, no. So I think what we need to look at, as has been mentioned here, is when we look at the Water Board 2015 order, when we look at the code that's referenced, how did those 2 come together and how should they be applied today? And as Supervisor Carpenter Harris said, and I think maybe Supervisor Cox too, that subsequent to that, whichever way that decision goes, there will be action to be taken by individuals on either side of that outcome. But for right now, it's the clarity so that they can come back to the applicant we've heard from today, other applicants that are represented by the numbers shared in the documentation, so that there is clarity. Does it allow for this or does it not?
So one of the things that occurs to me now that might lend us more clarity is to Supervisor Carpenter Harris's sort of helpful explanation from her experience on the water board. When deciding whether or not and how to issue a license, what is looked at, if I took notes correctly, is how will the ground behave when a particular activity is applied based on the slope and the water course. And so if they are deciding that based on what was submitted, and then the question before us says, can we add additional parcels? Can we increase the size of the mature canopy? Both of those things are going to change or have an impact upon, in some manner, how the ground will behave, because it's going to be applied, what the slope there is, and what the water course then will be. So how can we allow a change that hasn't been analyzed based on slope, water course, and land use?
Well, I mean, really what we're grappling with is related to these specific opt-outs and the way that they were created. In terms of the regulatory standard that was created with the adoption of the programmatic environmental impact report, these any parcel that gets a license in the county would go through the same environmental review, irrespective of whether they're in an opt-out or not. So the issue is really, can they move to a different APN? Is that what code intended to allow for? And if yes, then the environmental review is the same on whichever parcel they're on, and they would need to go through that environmental review process regardless. So that really what we're dealing with is these opt-outs and whether or not you could move onto an adjacent parcel that wasn't historically listed on the 2015 enrollment as a result of that being the mechanism to apply the exception and create grandfathering, if you will.
Okay, got you. So the outcome of that discharge is not determinative of whether or not it can move, because that would be analyzed. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And our programmatic environmental impact report happened after, several years after this. So, we're talking about a process that was sort of the original regulatory process in the entirety of the state. Was the North Coast region set up this order? That was, we were the pilot project for the state, which then ultimately this translated into the statewide general order for cannabis cultivation.
Can I hear from Supervisor Brownfield? Can you kind of explain the reasons for the motion that you put forward? When I was trying to get back to Drew, I was trying to say, okay, so staff felt this and they felt that and they found this and that and so forth, but I'm trying to understand what is it that is the driving force behind your motion, so I fully understand where you're coming from.
Sure. Okay, so the property piece is the big puzzle we've got here. It's the ambiguity, I think. That's what I've come down to, is that this definition of a APN, right, is, okay, so it's a very slippery slope for me. So let's say you've got a garden and you want to move it. And you've got, you're a big ranch and you got 4 parcels and you want to move your garden. Just a regular, okay, or cows. You want to move your cows. Okay, so we interfere with this and we start regulating exactly where you can put things. It's a very slippery slope. So to me, it says that this is a contiguous, that it's very clear about how these parcels should behave. They gave them 1 parcel because that's what they had to do, right? They didn't have the option to give them 25 parcels, so they gave them 1 parcel. When you get on that parcel and you realize, wow, or you buy a parcel, you buy a big piece like that, and you find this piece, and it goes, wow, that's a terrible place to grow. And over here in my own property, I've got another place I can do this, right? And I totally agree with a neighboring, I agree with with their concerns about what what they're concerned about. But to me, it's property rights here, and both people have property rights here. But in this case, they want to move one of their own gardens to another place. And to me, that's, should be perfectly acceptable. We go into a very slippery slope when we tell people what they can and cannot do on their own properties. We've gone down this road a little bit too far already in the state of California. So that's where I come from on this, on my motion. I understand both sides of it, but I am a property rights person, and this, to me, really is scary to me when, you know, when you start dictating where and how many trees on one acre. It goes down a bad path to me. So that's why.
And where or how, if at all, does the fact that we're talking about within these specific original opt-outs weigh into what you're saying?
It doesn't matter. Like, if the opt-outs were made, and you agree with them or you don't, there were grandfathered farms, period. You couldn't just say that a farmer couldn't do what he's been doing on his land forever. So that, to me, is, you know, is my argument. Every farmer has a right to do, you know, what they were told they could do.
So if I can ask a clarifying question.
Sure.
If I take what I think I hear you to be saying, and I take that train all the way to the end of the track, then I could have had in 2017 a parcel that I registered with the water board, and I said, my grow is right here. And then in each subsequent year, I could buy a continuously connected parcel that at the end of my purchasing strand, I have a parcel in Xenia. Those are all my parcels, and they're all continuous. And so now I can stretch that all. Where does it end? Where's the limit to what you are expressing?
I mean, in the real world, if that happened, absolutely. If somebody sold me a piece of property and it was contiguous, maybe you have a date, but if it's contiguous, put a date on it. Put a date when that doesn't exist anymore after that, right?
So
I mean,
dependent on a date, in my observation, there were dates. If it was enrolled by this date.
and they rolled by, go ahead, sorry.
And so would that give you the direction as well? Is that included in there? Parcels registered by that date is what it says.
If only we were that fortunate that it actually said that. What it says is, for applicants who have applied for. So it doesn't provide that specificity. My interpretation and the basis for the ambiguity determination is that it referred to specific APNs that were enrolled.
I just think we get into trouble when we try to make up. We just have to go with the words. Whatever those words say is what we can say, well, I was in the room at the time and I remember that this, in my opinion, was the intent. But what do the words today say? If we want to change the meaning of those, we change it going forward.
Can I get a clarification? Because I've heard this in the public comment. So I've heard, well, the fact that there was only one APN enrolled is because only one could be enrolled. So if I owned 5 contiguous parcels, the water board would not allow me to come in and enroll all those parcels at that time?
So again, I can't speak for the water board, but to the best of my understanding, the primary function of water board enrollment at that time was to limit the potential for enforcement activity against otherwise illegal cannabis cultivation sites. And so individual cultivation sites were enrolled through the waste discharge.
So it was all tied
program.
back to the site.
It was tied to a specific cultivation site. I can't speak, to whether individuals enrolled APNs that had no cultivation site with the intent to establish a cultivation site. I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay. Well, and picking up on what Supervisor Brownfield shared, I think, there's no way anybody's mind in this room is going to change about opt-outs based on what's said today. You either support them or you don't support them. In this case, the opt-outs that we're referring to, not just the one that we keep coming back to, but the opt-outs that we're referring to, which were the originals, all do exist. They existed to limit and prevent further cultivation in those areas. And the exception, as I understand it, that was allowed was for if you have enrolled in this specific program by this specific date. And at that time, that was very specific to your site. And so while I agree with Supervisor Brownfield that we need to be careful about limiting, say we want to limit what people can do with their properties, it's, that is specifically what the opt-out was about. And its intent was pretty clear, I think. And it's interesting, when we talk about what we shouldn't be telling people what they can do with their properties. I can't tell you how many calls and emails and social media posts were directed at me because somebody has bought some properties up in the North Lake Center and wants to open up some treatment facilities in those. And basically the state says, six tenants or under, go for it. Nobody can say a thing. Nobody can require anything different of you. And yet I got all kinds of people telling me that that shouldn't happen. It can't be. Why'd you let this happen on your watch? All kinds of things. So, there are times when we say, yeah, let's let everybody do whatever they want to do. And then there are times when people, well, don't let them do that. But in this particular case, it's not what we want or don't want. It is, what is the opt out? What was the intent? What was it parameters? And again, I keep coming back to, and I'm trying to understand though, the other perspective, the parameters were no cultivation other than for sites that have enrollment in the water board. And so, and that didn't mean 5 other parcels that I own today or 25 other parcels I might own in the future. It said, where are you doing it? Like you said, let you continue to do what you're doing. Well, continuing to do what you're doing is cultivating in that site, not cultivating in the whole acreage. And again, we always come back to it's anti-cannabis if you say these kinds of things. And this board is often challenged with it's all anti-cannabis. And this board has consistently over the last few years, at least 4 of the 5 here voted to reduce the general fees, change the permit annual process, fund $500,000 to keep the program going when it was about to collapse. There's been a history of this board trying to support, and we're now at 350 plus, I think, active licenses. We have distribution licenses. We have things going that I think we can feel good about. And so anytime something like this comes up where we're being asked to decide, what does the rules say? What do the laws say? Not do what you want. What do the law, ordinance, code, language say? Then it's immediately, if you don't either clear a roadblock, if you clear a roadblock, then you're against cannabis. If you set up a roadblock, then you're anti-cannabis. And this is, to me, is just trying to say, what is there? What are we supposed to be, and how are we supposed to be interpreting this so that Drew and his team can do their job?
Right. And I still think that the legal definition is clear about that. I mean, clear enough as mud, like everybody else says, but there's determinations on both sides. But
Okay.
I stick with my denial of the.
I guess, just to comment on what Supervisor Lutweiler said about this board being pro-cannabis and doing all we can to help the cannabis industry, I definitely disagree with that. I think that we have been a roadblock in some circumstances in the last year even, with distribution. And I'll just make one example of that. We let an owner of a piece of property come up here that was blank, did not have anything on it. A lady who had a studio who had no permit for that. And we took them as, as gospel, and we turned down the distribution on that, which I think was a hindrance. It should have went through. There was no real valid reason for it not to. And
Oriented facility wasn't?
and it
I think
was,
it's important that we stay on the
I
the
do
agenda item.
disagree with the fact that this board has been positive influence on cannabis industry in total generally. There has been times we've run up to opposition that I think was not fair.
Okay, should we call the vote?
For point, may I make a point of clarification? Supervisor Cox, do you believe that the motion that you made and I seconded fully encapsulates what our staff is requesting?
Shannon, could you
After
read the
the
motion
additional
back to me, please?
One second.
She's just clarifying
We
the
can
motion right
be
now. They haven't
clear
called
on
for
our
the vote.
motions.
All I had was motion to support staff's recommendation, but I was just taking loose notes. Did you say or mean more than that?
When I had that you had supported, you were voting to grant the appeal. Okay. And supporting staff's recommendations made at the planning commission in the resolution.
And the resolution, yes, I had
The
all 3
resolution's
points
not
in.
before you, well, you were supporting how I heard your motion was to grant the appeal and have the ambiguity resolved as staff had presented in the resolution to the planning commission.
Correct. Thank you. Supervisor Carpenter Harris, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But the first motion to be discussed and considered would be that of Supervisor Brownfield.
Which is, I have in my notes, offered to deny the appeal and adopt the legal definition of legal parcel as the guideline for consideration of these matters.
To include the contiguous parcels.
So the definition read right out of 17.43010, correct?
As the controlling definition for purposes of interpreting the applicants in the
We can change the
opt-out.
law later. You can always change it later.
Okay. Chair, you ready for the vote?
Yes, go ahead.
Supervisor Brownfield's motion.
Supervisor Gogan?
No.
Supervisor Brownfield?
Aye.
Supervisor Lutwiler?
No.
Supervisor Cox?
No.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris?
No.
So now Supervisor Cox's motion is on the table for vote.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris?
Aye.
Supervisor Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Lutwiler?
Aye.
Supervisor Brownfield?
No.
Supervisor Gogan?
No.
You voted no to both of them. You voted no to both motions? Okay.
Okay, closed session. Passed. Move to closed session.
Can you read the closed session?
These people wanted their way out for a second.
I'm sorry, just one more point of order. Is the appeal required 4-1? No. Still 3-2?
Session. Did you, I was gonna just wait for people to move on out. We're gonna move into closed session now, so anybody who wants to step outside would
So you
be
need to
great.
call for public comment regarding closed session,
will.
please? Okay.
Need to read them?
Okay, here we go. Closed session. Government Code, Section 54954.5E, sorry, .5E, Public Employee Appointment, County Clerk Recorder, Assessor, Register of Voters. F2, County Government Section 54954-5F, Labor Negotiations, County Designated Representatives, Susie Hawkins, Leila Casillas, and Margaret Long. Employee Organization, Deputy Sheriff's Association. The last closed session we had, advice was, direction was given to staff, and we'll take any public comment on the closed session in front of us.
On item number 1, I just wanted to comment in the past, there had been a public interview process. It wasn't clear from the agenda item if that is still the process and when that might be happening. So if you could provide some clarity in that regard, I think it'd be beneficial to the public to understand. You're not picking someone at this closed session. There's a public interview process still. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And when might we
We
expect
are
that?
not making a selection today.
Yeah, and then, so that will be publicly noticed. I assume there'll be a special meeting, 24-hour notice. Is that kind of where we're at?
You
Are we
right.
looking at Friday potentially, or can you let us know
Yeah,
right
we'll let
now?
you know, but it will be public and it will be noticed.
Well, 24-hour notice is, it's a stretch, kind of. If you could, I know you know. It's Friday.
I know you know.
Transparency is always a lovely thing with government. I really appreciate your time today. This is a rough decision. Thank you.
We're done with closed session.
I think we're done with open session.
Turning open session.
One more time. Yes, we are.
Liam, say, we are adjourning open.
We are adjourned and we adjourned from open session. We're now into closed session.
Thank you.